Cop attacks. Black Jogger, his sister's campaign, lands officer, behind bars. The sound of fists hitting flesh echoed across the quiet trail in South River Park, just east of downtown Savannah. It was barely 6 o'clock a.m., the sun barely up, the air heavy with spring humidity. Jordan Miles, 18, a high school senior and track star, lay face down in the dirt, his breath choked by blood and gravel. He had been out on his usual morning jog. His headphones were still dangling from his ears, one AirPod lost in the grass. A knee pressed hard into his back. His arms were twisted unnaturally behind him. "Stop resisting," a voice barked. "I'm not," Jordan gasped. Officer Craig Brannon didn't hear him, or he didn't want to. His fists rained down again, knuckles bruising against Jordan's ribs. Officer Sean Lutz stood nearby, frozen, his hand half raised. "He's cuffed," Lutz finally shouted. "Craig, he's cuffed." Brannon didn't stop. By the time the ambulance arrived, Jordan had a fractured orbital bone, 3 cracked ribs, and swelling in his brain. He was in a coma before the paramedics even rolled him into the ER. Raina Miles was halfway through a budget meeting when her phone vibrated twice. She glanced down, annoyed, but then she saw the name. Mom. Then came the text. Jordan. Hospital. Hurry. The next hour blurred. Raina barely remembered driving from Atlanta to Savannah, only the feeling of her chest caving in tighter with every mile. She stormed into the ER in a navy blazer and worn sneakers, her curls pulled into a quick bun. The smell of antiseptic hit her like a wall. "My brother," she said, nearly tripping over her words. "Jordan Miles." He was brought in. A nurse looked up, hesitated. "Room 4C. He's stable, for now." Raina didn't hear the rest. She ran. When she entered the room, the world shifted. Jordan was almost unrecognizable. Tubes snaked from his mouth. One side of his face was purple and swollen shut. His chest rose and fell slowly, mechanically. Her knees buckled. A doctor came in. Raina turned, voice raw. "What happened to him?" He hesitated. "The police brought him in, said he was a suspect, resisted arrest. We're still piecing it together." "Suspect?" she snapped. "He was jogging. He had a race next week. He doesn't even have a parking ticket." The doctor didn't answer. Outside the room, 2 officers stood silently. Brannon and Lutz. Raina clocked them immediately. The body language, the stiff backs, the silence too rehearsed. "You did this," she said, stepping forward. Brannon cleared his throat. "Your brother matched a robbery suspect. We followed procedure. He resisted. He's 140 pounds, soaking wet, wears glasses. He was out running. What the hell did he resist?" Brannon didn't flinch. "Ma'am, we acted in accordance with training." Raina's voice dropped. "Say his name. Say Jordan Miles." "Ma'am, we have nothing further." "I wasn't asking for your report. I was asking if you even know the name of the boy you put in a coma." Lutz looked away. Brannon didn't answer. Raina turned back to Jordan, took his hand gently. He didn't stir, but her grip tightened. She didn't cry. Not yet. By noon, the police department had already issued a vague press release. Teen injured during police encounter. Raina watched the footage on the local news. A body cam clip flashed briefly on screen, barely 5 seconds, blurry, no timestamp, no audio. She turned off the TV. She knew how this worked. She'd organized too many rallies, spoken at too many vigils, written too many op-eds about systemic failure. But she never thought the system would come for her own brother. She called a name she hadn't said aloud in 2 years. "Isaiah Freeman," she said when he picked up. His voice was wary. "Raina? Wow, it's been... I need your help. My brother's in a coma. The cops say he resisted. He didn't. I need you to help me take them down." A pause. "I'm in." The next morning, Raina walked to the scene. She followed Jordan's usual jogging route. Trees lined the trail. Morning dew still clung to the grass. Then she found it. Blood. Not much, but enough to tell her this was where it happened. She crouched low. Something glinted in the grass. His other AirPod. A woman in a pink hoodie was walking her dog nearby. She slowed when she saw Raina. "Are you family?" the woman asked gently. Raina stood. "He's my brother." The woman hesitated. "I was here yesterday. I didn't see it all, but I heard yelling. He was screaming for help, then the sirens." "Would you be willing to tell someone that?" The woman looked down at her dog. "If it helps him, yes." That night, Raina sat beside Jordan's bed. The machines beeped in quiet rhythm. "I need you to wake up, Joe. But if you can't, I'll fight for both of us. You hear me?" The nurse walked in to check vitals. Raina didn't move. She kept her hand on his. As she left the room, she saw Officer Lutz down the hall, alone, leaning on a vending machine like it held up the world. She approached him slowly. "You hesitated yesterday," she said. He looked up, startled, then looked around. "I can't talk to you." "You already did, with your eyes," he sighed. "It's not that simple." "No," Raina said. "It never is, until someone makes it simple." She walked away before he could answer. Later that night, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. Just one text. "Check park camera logs. 5:47 a.m. South River Trail." She stared at it. Her pulse quickened. The next morning, she showed it to Isaiah. He raised a brow. "You think it's Lutz?" "I think it's someone inside who saw what happened and couldn't live with it." Isaiah nodded. "Then let's dig, and let's make them wish they never touched Jordan Miles." As the sun rose again over Savannah, the city had no idea it was about to become ground zero in a battle it wouldn't forget. Because they didn't just attack a jogger, they picked the wrong sister. And Raina Miles was just getting started. The press conference was short, smug, and sickening. Officer Craig Brannan stood stiffly behind the podium in his pressed uniform, hands clasped behind his back, speaking like he was reading from a training manual. At approximately 5:47 a.m. on the morning of April 14th, officers responded to reports of a possible robbery suspect matching the description of an African-American male in the vicinity of South River Trail. Upon engagement, the individual resisted arrest. Officers used reasonable force to detain the subject. The matter is currently under internal review. Reasonable force. Raina nearly laughed out loud as she watched the live stream from her phone. Her brother lay unconscious in a hospital bed with half his face broken, and that man dared to call it reasonable. What made it worse were the nodding heads behind him. The police chief, the mayor's liaison, a deputy in a suit, everyone pretending that the words meant something. As the feed ended, Raina's phone began to buzz. Her inbox filled with messages from activists, journalists, former colleagues. They all asked the same thing. "What are you going to do?" She sat in the hospital cafeteria staring at her coffee, untouched. Her mind moved in slow circles, memory, rage, strategy. Then she opened Instagram and posted a single photo. It was Jordan, taken 2 weeks before the assault, smiling in his track uniform, holding a medal. Underneath, she wrote, "They said he matched a suspect. He matched my brother." Justice for Jordan. It spread like wildfire. Within 2 hours, it had 10,000 shares. By that evening, national civil rights accounts had reposted it. Celebrities started commenting, local news ran stories. At the hospital, Raina sat beside Jordan's bed and whispered, "They're watching now, Joe. You've already made them look." But she knew attention wasn't enough. They would spin it, dilute it, bury it. She needed proof. Something undeniable. She met Isaiah in the parking lot at 9 p.m. sharp. He slid into her car carrying a laptop bag and a file folder. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I was born for this." He smiled. Still a little dramatic, I see. She didn't smile back. What do you have? He opened the folder. So far, we have 3 body cam clips released to media, all edited. Short segments, heavy redaction, no timestamps. So they're hiding something. Obviously, but here's the part they forgot to scrub. There's a backup system for all traffic stops. Dash cam footage from the patrol car. Where is it? He exhaled. It's not public, not easily anyway, but I have a contact in the city's IT contractor list. If someone accessed or altered that footage from inside, the system logs it. She looked at him. That's not legal? I'm not legal counsel tonight. I'm your partner, and I'm telling you, if we want to get this in court, we need to build our case before they bury the rest. Raina nodded. Let's go digging. They stayed up most of the night in Isaiah's apartment, cross-referencing badge numbers with precinct logs, comparing timestamp discrepancies, and cataloging every officer with previous complaints. One name kept reappearing. Brannon. He had 5 use of force complaints in the last 3 years, all closed, all labeled inconclusive. But then Isaiah froze mid-scroll. What is it? Raina asked. Check this out. He turned his laptop toward her. A line of code, a system log entry. User R.B. Keller accessed dash cam footage from Unit 234 at 6:15 a.m. the morning of the attack. Wait, who's R.B. Keller? Isaiah stared at her. Lieutenant Robert Keller, precinct supervisor. He accessed the footage right after it happened? Isaiah nodded slowly, which means he knew. And more importantly, he's not in any of the reports. Raina sat back in her chair. Her thoughts raced. Keller's the one pulling strings. Brannon's just the muscle. They sat in silence for a beat. Then Raina said quietly, We need someone from inside. The next day, a plain envelope arrived at the hospital's front desk. No return address. Inside was a thumb drive and a note. You want the truth? Start with room 5. Raina stared at it for a long time, then handed it to Isaiah. What's room 5? He asked. Internal affairs. The thumb drive was encrypted, but Isaiah had it open in less than an hour. It contained a single video file, uncut, raw. The same scene, but this time from Luta's body cam. They watched in stunned silence. Jordan, hands raised, stepping back slowly. Brannon shouting, slamming him to the ground. The cuffs going on. Jordan face down, and then Brannon's fists flying, again and again. Jesus, Isaiah whispered. He was already restrained, Raina said, her voice flat. They beat him while he was down. She leaned forward, paused the footage. The screen showed Jordan's limp body, Brannon's arm cocked mid-swing. Now it's not just excessive force, she said. It's torture. By nightfall, #Justice for Jordan was trending nationwide. But with attention came threats. Raina's phone buzzed with messages like, You're next. Don't poke where you don't belong. Drop it or lose everything. Her apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just overturned drawers, papers scattered. A warning. Still, she didn't stop. The next morning, she showed up at the community center where she used to organize voter drives. She brought coffee, donuts, and the full story. By noon, she had a team. They launched a campaign page, standwithjordan.org. They collected statements from neighbors, classmates, teachers. They posted facts, timelines, video stills. They set up a hotline for other victims. Within 24 hours, 5 new names came in. 5. All black, all male. All had run-ins with Brannon. Isaiah tracked down one Derek Langston, age 23, who'd been hospitalized last year after a routine stop by the same officers. His mother had filed a complaint. It went nowhere. She's scared, Isaiah said, but she's willing to talk. She just wants someone to believe her. Tell her we do, Raina said. Tell her this time we're not backing down. At the hospital, Jordan's condition remained stable but unchanged. Still unconscious, still silent. Raina sat beside him, scrolling through messages on her phone when his fingers twitched. She froze. "Joe?" she whispered. The nurse rushed in, checked the monitors. "It could be reflex," she said gently. But Raina didn't believe that. She leaned down, held his hand tighter. "I see you, baby. Just hold on. I'm coming with fire." Later that night, in a precinct break room across town, Officer Sean Lutz stared at his reflection in the vending machine window. His face was pale, his hands shaking. He had seen the video go viral. He'd heard the whispers. He knew Raina was coming. He picked up a burner phone from his pocket, typed one line, "Follow the lieutenant," then hit send. Outside, the city slept, but the war had already begun. The letter came in a plain manila envelope, with no return address and no markings except for a single word written across the front in bold black Sharpie. Trust. Inside was a printout. 5 pages of internal complaint summaries from Savannah PD, redacted names, case numbers, resolved stamps, but 2 things were clear as glass. Every incident listed involved Officer Craig Brannon, and none had led to disciplinary action. Raina sat at her dining table, jaw locked, fingers tightening on the edge of the paper. Isaiah stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. "This isn't a leak. This is a damn break." "And someone inside wants it to break," Raina said. She pulled out her laptop and began cross-referencing the complaint dates with public arrest records. "Look at this one. November the 3rd, 2022. Alleged excessive force during a traffic stop. Victim hospitalized. No charges filed. Complaint dismissed." Isaiah leaned in. "Check who signed off on the dismissal." Raina scrolled down and froze. Lieutenant Robert Keller. Again, same name that accessed the dashcam files, same name not appearing in any public-facing reports. "He's not just shielding Brannon," Raina said. "He's orchestrating it." They sat in silence, the weight of it sinking in. Isaiah let out a slow breath. "If Keller's covering Brannon, he's likely done it before, which means this isn't just about Jordan. This could be a whole pattern of abuse." Raina looked at him. "Then we stop thinking small. This isn't a protest anymore. This is a movement." That afternoon, Raina returned to the hospital to check on Jordan. His condition was stable but unchanged. Machines blinked. Nurses came and went. She sat beside his bed, holding his hand gently. "I know you can't hear me, Joe," she whispered. "But I need you to know, this is so much bigger than us now. They've done this before, too many times, and they thought no one would notice." She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "But they were wrong. You didn't just survive that beating. You lit a fuse." A nurse peeked in. "Miss Miles, you have a visitor downstairs." Raina stood, puzzled. She hadn't scheduled any meetings. She descended to the lobby and spotted a woman seated alone, nervously clutching a brown purse in her lap. Late 40s, tired eyes, long cardigan. She stood when she saw Raina. "Are you Raina Miles?" the woman asked, voice shaky. "Yes. Can I help you?" "My name's Tanya Langston. My son, Derek. He was attacked by those same officers last year. They said he resisted arrest during a traffic stop. But he didn't." Raina blinked. "Wait, Langston, you filed the complaint." Tanya nodded slowly. "It disappeared. No one returned my calls. No one came." "I'm here now," Raina said softly. "Tell me everything." They moved to a side room near the chapel. Tanya pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling. "I saved everything. Photos, medical bills." The hospital wouldn't say much, but they noted trauma consistent with blunt force. He still has night terrors. Isaiah arrived 10 minutes later. He sat beside Raina as Tanya detailed the stop how Brannon pulled Derek from his car, slammed him onto the pavement, then punched him repeatedly in the side of the head. No charges, no explanation, just a warning. "Next time, keep your mouth shut." Isaiah asked gently, "Would your son be willing to give a statement?" "He's scared," Tanya said, "but I think he might, if he knew he wasn't alone." Raina placed a hand over hers. "He's not." Later that evening, Raina returned to her apartment to find her door cracked open. She froze. She pulled her phone from her purse and quietly dialed Isaiah. "My door's open," she whispered. I didn't leave it that way." "I'm 5 minutes out," he said. "Don't go in." But she already had. The lights were off. She stepped carefully, her breath tight in her chest. The living room was a mess. Papers overturned, books scattered. Her laptop was gone. A message was carved into the wall with something sharp. "Stop digging." Isaiah arrived moments later, found her standing in the middle of the wreckage, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm not stopping." He helped her clean up the space, then handed her a new burner phone. "They're watching you now." "Let them," she said. The next morning, she filed a formal request under the Georgia Open Records Act for all complaints tied to Brannon, Lutz, and Lieutenant Keller from the past 5 years. She personally delivered the documents to Internal Affairs, handing them over to Captain Melissa Greer. Greer, a composed black woman with decades on the force, flipped through the file without looking up. "You're making waves," she said. "I'm unearthing truth," Raina replied. Greer met her eyes. "This isn't a safe path." "Neither is jogging while black," Raina said quietly. Greer studied her for a long moment, then signed the receipt form and handed back the duplicate copy. "You didn't hear this from me," she said, "but you should look into the Keene file. It never made the news, but it never sat right with me." "Keene?" "Daryl Keene. Died in custody. It was ruled an accident, but something always smelled off." That night, Isaiah and Raina found the coroner's report online. Keene had been arrested for disorderly conduct. He was found dead in a holding cell 12 hours later. Blunt trauma to the skull. Internal hemorrhaging. The report listed slipped in the shower as the cause. "Guess who processed the arrest?" Isaiah said, scrolling down. "Brannon." "And who signed off on the incident report?" Raina asked. Isaiah didn't answer. He just turned the screen toward her. "Keller." Raina sat back, her heart pounding. "This is it," she said. "We're not just dealing with rogue cops. We're dealing with a machine. Keller's the one keeping it running." Isaiah looked at her. "You know what this means, right?" She nodded. "We go federal." He sighed. "You sure?" Raina looked over at the wall. Taped to it were photos of Jordan, Derek, Keene, names, dates, articles. "I was sure the moment I saw my brother's blood on that hospital bed." Isaiah opened a new document on his laptop. Title: Complaint under 42 U.S. Code Psalm 1983. Civil action for deprivation of rights. And Raina began to dictate. They weren't just suing Brannon. They were suing the city, the department, and the man who buried every lie in polished paper and policy. Lieutenant Robert Keller. Across town, Keller stared out his office window, jaw tight, a newscast playing faintly behind him. Raina Miles accuses Savannah PD of systemic cover-up in latest online post. Her hashtag now trending. #Stand with Jordan. He turned off the TV, then picked up his phone. "She's moving fast," he said. "You told me this would stay quiet." A voice on the other end replied coolly, "Don't panic, just plan." But Keller wasn't listening. Because something inside him, something cold and familiar, told him what was coming. The tide was turning. And this time it had a name. It started with one interview. Raina sat across from a local reporter in a dimly lit podcast studio, the mic hot in front of her, the tension electric. Outside the window, Savannah's downtown buzzed like any other humid southern afternoon. But inside, something sharp and irreversible was happening. "I'm not here to stir chaos," she said into the mic, steady and clear. "I'm here because my brother is lying in a hospital bed with a fractured skull, and the people who put him there are still collecting paychecks." The reporter leaned in. "You're claiming a systemic cover-up within Savannah PD. That's a big accusation, Miss Miles." "No," she said. "It's a documented fact. I have internal memos, redacted files, and first-hand witness testimony. And I'm not the only one. This isn't just about Jordan anymore. This is about a culture of silence that's cost lives." By the time she walked out of the studio, the hashtag was trending again. Justice for Jordan. But this time, it wasn't just Twitter. Cable news picked it up. Local activists organized marches. Even churches issued public support. Savannah was waking up, but not everyone was celebrating. The next morning, Isaiah's apartment was broken into. They found the door kicked in, his files torn apart. The walls had been spray-painted with the word liar in red across his whiteboard. Nothing stolen, just chaos. Just a message. Isaiah stood in the wreckage, his eyes scanning the damage. Then he turned to Raina. "They want us scared." "Then let's make them afraid," she said. That day, Raina published a bombshell. She released a full timeline of complaints tied to Brannon and Lutz, including the mysterious Keene case and the sudden suppression of the Langston file. She tagged major media outlets, civil rights attorneys, even members of Congress. She ended the post with a single line. "This isn't just a few bad cops. This is what happens when power protects itself. But not this time." The backlash was immediate. City officials scrambled. The mayor issued a vague statement about ongoing investigations. The police department promised an internal review. But no one could ignore the shift. People were paying attention now. Eyes were everywhere, including the Department of Justice. 1 week later, a knock came at Raina's door. Special Agent Colton Hayes, Civil Rights Division. Tall, white, maybe late 40s, eyes like ice water. He introduced himself, flashed his badge, and asked to speak with her privately. "I'm here because of the complaint you filed," he said as they sat in her living room. "Then I hope you read every page," she replied. "I did. And if even half of it holds up, this could be one of the biggest civil rights violations this region's seen in a decade." She folded her arms. "So, are you opening a case?" "That depends. You willing to testify under oath?" "Absolutely." "And your sources, can they go public?" Raina hesitated. "Some. Others are scared, but I'm working on it." Agent Hayes nodded slowly. "We'll need corroboration, names, logs, a pattern of negligence or willful obstruction. You willing to go after Keller directly?" "He's the puppet master," she said. "You cut the strings at the top." Hayes studied her for a moment. "You've got fire. I've seen people burn out under less heat than this." She looked him straight in the eye. "Then pour gasoline." By the end of the week, DOJ had sent official notice to Savannah PD of a federal inquiry. The department scrambled, deleting tweets, issuing vague statements. But the pressure was building. Then came the twist no one expected. Lieutenant Keller resigned. Effective immediately. No statement, no press conference. Just a leak to the local news that he was retiring early for personal reasons. Raina knew better. "This is a cover-up," she said to Isaiah as they sat on her couch, watching the announcement. "He's ducking accountability," Isaiah added. "They're trying to make him vanish before the subpoenas start flying." But Raina wasn't done. She called Agent Hayes the next morning. "If Keller's off the force, that means his files are vulnerable, right? He's no longer protected by departmental privilege." There was a pause on the line. "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" Hayes asked. "I want his email logs, his deleted messages, internal memos. I want to know who else helped bury those cases." Hayes Kaid, "You're going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. Then I'm doing something right." Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the edge of town, Tanya Langston's son, Derek, agreed to speak on camera. The footage was raw, just a chair, a blank wall, and a trembling young man in a hoodie. "He told me to shut up," Derek said, his voice shaking. "I asked why I was being pulled over. He didn't like that. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground and he's yelling, 'Stop resisting,' even though I wasn't moving." He paused, swallowing. "I thought I was gonna die." The video went viral. Within hours, national outlets reached out to Raina for interviews. Civil rights groups offered legal aid. Protesters flooded downtown again this time, with signs that bore not just Jordan's name, but Derek's, Keen's, others. But that night, Raina received a call that nearly knocked the wind out of her. It was from a blocked number. "Ms. Miles," the voice said. Male, calm, almost too calm. "I suggest you stop. You're poking things you don't understand. This is your last warning." She stood still, the phone pressed against her ear. "Who is this?" she demanded, but the line went dead. She reported it immediately. Hayes promised to trace it, but she knew better. This wasn't someone random. This was connected. Isaiah offered to stay with her that night, but she declined. "I'm not hiding," she said. "Let them watch. Let them listen. Every threat just proves we're right." But even she couldn't have predicted what happened next. 3 days later, another whistleblower came forward, a young officer named Marcus Bell. He walked into Hayes's office and asked for protection in exchange for testimony. What he revealed turned the case on its head. Keller hadn't just covered up complaints. He'd actively coerced other officers into altering reports. Bell had been ordered to erase body cam footage. He had voice memos, emails, proof. And most damning of all, an audio file recorded during a late-night meeting where Keller explicitly discussed letting Brannon loose in high-crime neighborhoods to teach lessons. It was the smoking gun. When Raina listened to the recording, her hands shook. "You have your monster," she told Hayes. Hayes leaned forward. "And now we burn down his kingdom." The press conference was set for 10 a.m., but by 9:15, the courthouse steps were already a sea of voices, signs, and cameras. It felt like the whole city had converged on that one spot. Protesters, reporters, curious locals, and more than a few plainclothes officers watching from the fringes. Raina stood just inside the courthouse lobby, heart pounding beneath her blazer. Isaiah was beside her, eyes locked on his phone, checking the live stream feed. "You ready?" he asked. "No," she whispered, then smiled faintly. "But that's never stopped me." Agent Hayes approached, stiff as always, dressed in a suit that looked like it hadn't known rest since D.C. "Press is hot. You've got about 8 minutes to make your impact before the narrative starts to spin." "I only need 5, she replied. They stepped out together, the sun glaring down as microphones were shoved forward like spears. Raina scanned the crowd and spotted Jordan's old college friends, Tanya Langston in tears, and even Officer Marcus Bell standing off to the side, ball cap pulled low. Courage wasn't always loud. She stepped up to the podium and spoke. "I'm not here as a lawyer today. I'm here as a sister, as a citizen, as someone who believes that truth still matters." She outlined everything. The altered reports, the deleted footage, the forced resignations, the DOJ probe now expanding into a full-blown federal civil rights case. When she played a snippet of Keller's recording, his voice casually referring to cleaning up the streets with Brannon, an audible gasp spread through the crowd. Then she dropped the bomb. "This morning we filed a civil suit not just against officers Brannon and Lutz, but against the city of Savannah, the police department, and former Lieutenant Keller personally for obstruction of justice, malicious prosecution, and gross civil rights violations. That's when the shouting began, a mix of cheers and angry questions, but Reyna didn't flinch. The days of sweeping pain under bureaucratic rugs are over. Jordan deserves more than silence. So does every name on the list behind me. She turned and gestured to the giant screen where the names of 37 victims were displayed, some known, some never before publicized. Some were alive, others were not. Then she walked away from the podium. But the storm was far from over. That night her car was vandalized, smeared with crude words in red paint, tires slashed, windshield shattered. A brick on the seat with a note, "Drop it or we drop you." The next morning, Isaiah found her sitting on her apartment floor, surrounded by case files, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. "They're trying to scare you into quitting," he said. She looked up, her eyes bloodshot but sharp. "I'm past scared. I'm pissed." He knelt beside her, voice softer. "Then let's hit harder." And they did. That week, Isaiah released a mini-documentary online titled What the Badge Buried. It featured whistleblower testimony, police transcripts, and side-by-side comparisons of official reports with the truth. The final scene, a side-by-side clip of Jordan playing basketball in high school and footage of him unconscious in a hospital bed. The video exploded. Millions of views. Celebrities reposting. A pro bono legal team from New York offered full support. Rallies spread beyond Savannah to Atlanta, to Charlotte, to D.C. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Agent Hayes called late one night with an urgent tone. "We found something," he said. "Something Keller was hiding." Reyna's pulse spiked. "What kind of something?" "There's a bank account offshore. Multiple deposits that line up with closed cases. Looks like Keller was being paid to suppress certain charges." Her stomach dropped. "Paid by who?" "That's the part that'll blow this whole thing open. We're still tracking the money trail, but it leads back to a private security firm, one that has a contract with the city." "Are you saying—" "I'm saying it's bigger than just dirty cops. Keller may have been a middleman, and the people behind him, they're still active, still in the shadows." The next day, Reyna received an envelope at her office. No return address, inside a USB drive, no note, no label, just a single file titled Echo. Isaiah ran it through a secure computer. It was audio. Another recording. Keller's voice again. But this time he wasn't alone. A second voice, deeper, older. A name surfaced: Councilman Garrett Langford, City Council President, the man who had shaken her hand at Jordan's vigil. "We've got the DOJ sniffing around," Keller's voice said on the file. Langford replied, calm and casual. "Then maybe it's time we clean house before they do. Start with that Miles girl. She's too loud." Silence. Then Keller. "You want me to lean on her?" Langford. "Just enough to remind her who runs this city." Reyna felt the room tilt. They weren't just fighting bad cops. They were fighting the city's power structure. Isaiah sat back in his chair, stunned. "We release this. It's not just about Jordan anymore. This could bring the whole damn city council down." She stared at the screen. "Then maybe it's time it fell." They sent the file to Hayes. By noon the next day, federal agents raided 3 city offices and seized records. Garrett Langford was taken in for questioning. Keller, tracked to a rented house outside Jacksonville, was arrested trying to leave the state. But the backlash came swift. Anonymous accounts began releasing smear campaigns about Reyna. Claims that she falsified her credentials, that she was financially motivated. An old boyfriend was even paid to speak to the press about her agenda. Her inbox flooded with hate mail. Threats, fake legal notices. She was doxxed, Her parents were harassed. Isaiah urged her to go quiet for a while. But Raina did the opposite. She went on national TV. In front of millions, she told the story, not just of her brother, but of a city that had chosen silence over justice for too long. "I'm not a hero," she said. "I'm a woman who lost her brother and found the truth, and I'm not going anywhere." The host blinked. "Even with all the threats?" "If they want me gone," she said calmly, "they'll have to try harder." And just like that, the tide shifted again, because truth has a gravity. And Savannah was starting to feel the pull. Raina couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her brother's face. But now it wasn't the gentle, teasing Jordan she remembered. It was his face on a protest sign, on a courtroom slideshow, on a body bag in a memory she had tried for so long to suppress. She was no longer chasing justice. She was surviving war. The knock on her door at 3:17 a.m. was soft but deliberate. She grabbed her phone, heart racing, and moved cautiously to the peephole. Isaiah. His face was pale, his eyes panicked. "You need to see this," he whispered. She let him in and barely had time to ask before he handed her his tablet. A video was already queued up. It had been posted less than an hour ago on a fringe conspiracy channel, but was already being shared by major blogs and social media accounts. The video was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Raina entering a courthouse office, shaking hands with Agent Hayes, and then spliced in security cam footage of her sitting alone in a room with stacks of files. The voiceover claimed it was evidence of her tampering with sealed documents and coercing federal officials. "It's edited," Isaiah said, "but unless we prove that fast, they're gonna twist this like they always do." Raina exhaled sharply. "They're using every dirty play in the book." Isaiah nodded. "And I think I know who gave them the footage." He pulled up a still image. It was Keller, handcuffed and walking into a federal building, head down, but in the background, blurred but distinct, was someone else. Lieutenant Sarah Timmons. Raina's voice dropped. She was Jordan's arresting officer that night. Yeah, and now she's leaking videos to smear you. They had missed her in the chaos of chasing Keller, of taking down Langford, of watching the walls close in. Timmons had slipped right through. She hadn't quit. She hadn't spoken. She'd simply gone quiet and started fighting from the shadows. "She's not just protecting the system," Isaiah muttered. "She's one of its architects." That morning they dug into her record. What they found was chilling. Over the past 10 years, Timmons had been involved in 6 high-profile arrests, all young black men, all cases with excessive force complaints that were quietly settled or buried. 2 of those men had disappeared entirely from the public record. No trial, no press. Vanished. One name in particular stood out: DeMarcus Vale, age 19, arrested 4 years ago. Last known address listed as temporary holding facility, but the facility had been closed since 2018. "He never made it out," Raina whispered. They tracked down DeMarcus's mother. She still lived in Savannah, still lit a candle for her son every Sunday, still waited for a call she knew deep down would never come. "You think she'll talk?" Isaiah asked. "She has to." The woman, Sandra Vale, welcomed them with suspicion. Her living room smelled of candle wax and sadness. Raina showed her the photo of Timmons. "I know her," Sandra said, barely above a whisper. "She said DeMarcus resisted, said he was dangerous. But he wasn't. He was scared. He just ran." "Did she ever give you proof?" "Only a form. Said it was classified due to federal involvement. I tried to sue, but no lawyer would touch it. A week later, someone broke into my house. Didn't take anything, just left it torn up. Like a warning." Raina's jaw clenched. It wasn't just a cover-up, it was a pattern. That evening, Raina met Agent Hayes at a diner far from downtown. She handed him everything: the names, the testimonies, the files, and the video smear. He listened, quiet, focused. Then he slid a folder across the table. "You're not the only one gathering pieces," he said. Inside were transcripts, secret internal memos from the police department, some dating back over a decade. They described a containment strategy for specific neighborhoods, high-density monitoring, alternative interventions. They were targeting kids, Reyna said. Hayes nodded. And they had help, council funding, private contractors, and yes, officers like Timmons. Reyna stared out the window. They built a system to bury people like Jordan, and they almost buried me. No, Hayes said firmly. They underestimated you. She looked back at him. Help me take her down. That night, Reyna went live again, but not with outrage. This time, she shared DeMarcus's story. She showed photos, interviews, and a heartbreaking voicemail his mother had saved, dated 2 days before his arrest. It hit the internet like a lightning strike. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Jordan anymore. It was about all of them. Timmons's name trended nationwide within hours. Hashtags exploded. #Justice for DeMarcus. #Reyna Miles. Truth. #Unseal the files. By morning, Timmons was placed on administrative leave, but she wasn't hiding. She went on a local news channel that afternoon, and she flipped the narrative, claimed that Reyna was emotionally unstable, that the DOJ was being weaponized against honest cops, that she, Sarah Timmons, was the real victim of cancel culture hysteria. "She's baiting us," Isaiah warned. "She wants to divide the story, make it about personality instead of proof." "Then we need more than proof," Reyna said. "We need undeniable truth." And that came from the last place they expected, an anonymous envelope, no return address, inside a hard drive and a note. It read, "She kept copies. I made my own." The files on the drive were raw body cam footage, some missing from official records, others never logged at all. Unedited, undeniable. One showed Timmons slamming DeMarcus against a wall. He wasn't resisting. He was crying, pleading. Another showed her laughing with Keller after Jordan's arrest, talking about how easy it was to keep them in line. Reyna couldn't breathe as she watched it. Neither could Hayes. The footage was sent directly to the DOJ, the ACLU, and every major news outlet. They didn't wait. That night, federal agents raided Timmons's home, and she wasn't there. She had fled. But the story had already shifted. The truth was too loud now. No more backrooms, no more sealed files. And Savannah was waking up, still bruised, still bleeding, but wide-eyed and furious. And Reyna Miles, no longer just a sister or a lawyer or a grieving woman, was now the face of a movement they could no longer ignore. Reyna hadn't stepped outside in 3 days. Not because she was afraid, but because the world was now watching her every move. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Protesters lit candles in her name. Online threats poured in by the minute, but so did letters of support from strangers, students, mothers who had lost sons. She read them all. But the message that shook her most wasn't public. It was a private voicemail from Timmons. "You think you've won something, Reyna. You're playing checkers on a chessboard you don't even understand. This isn't about you, it never was, but now you've made it personal. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away, or I swear to God, I will burn every piece of your life to the ground." The message ended with silence, not a threat of violence, a promise of destruction. Isaiah slammed his laptop shut after listening. "We need to go to the press with this." "No," Reyna said calmly. "We need to go to the courthouse." She had spent the past 2 days assembling everything, the leaked footage, sworn statements, Hayes's classified documents, and the sealed testimony of a federal contractor who had overseen the software used to bury arrest records. They weren't just going to expose Timmins. They were going to dismantle the entire system that protected her. That morning, the courthouse lobby was flooded with cameras. Raina walked through it in silence, her brother's dog tag in one hand, the flash drive in the other. Isaiah beside her, Hayes already inside. As she stepped onto the stand, something unexpected happened. The judge recused himself. Whispers filled the courtroom. Raina stood still, and then the new judge entered. A black woman in her 60s, silver hair braided down her back, eyes that scanned the room with measured fire. Justice Alana Brooks. She requested the case, Hayes had whispered. You have allies you've never even met. The room settled. Raina laid it all out. The pattern of abuse, the sealed files, the deliberate cover-ups. She pulled no punches. She didn't sugarcoat the pain. She didn't apologize for her anger. I am not here as a grieving sister, she said. I am here because my brother deserved to live, because DeMarcus deserved a future, because we all deserve a system that does not consume us for profit or fear. Brooks listened, not blinking, not interrupting. Then the twist came. Hayes stood and introduced new evidence, an arrest warrant for Police Chief Raymond Cross. Gasps filled the courtroom. What? Isaiah whispered. Cross had been untouchable for years, a political giant, the man who had protected Timmins, Keller, and Langford, who had ordered the containment strategies, who had funded private security firms that vanished kids like DeMarcus. And now he was being charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice, destruction of evidence, and civil rights violations. But it got worse. Cross wasn't in the building. He had fled the night before. Brooks ordered a federal manhunt, but even as the courtroom buzzed with chaos, Raina remained still. We're cutting off the head, she whispered. But the body's still crawling. After court adjourned, Hayes handed her a sealed file. This came from deep inside, a whistleblower. Timmins wasn't acting alone. There's a list. Inside were names, dozens, officers, judges, law clerks, even 2 state senators. The system wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as it was designed to. Later that night, Raina returned to her apartment. For the first time, it was quiet. The media had moved to the federal building. The crowd had thinned. Her hands trembled as she closed the door behind her. A soft knock startled her. She turned. It wasn't Isaiah. It was Sandra Vale, the mother of DeMarcus. She looked older than the last time they met, worn down but solid. I saw what you did in there, she said, voice shaking. You spoke like no one else ever has for us. Raina felt her throat close. I couldn't save my son, Sandra said, but maybe you can save someone else's. She handed Raina a framed photo, DeMarcus in a cap and gown, smiling. He was going to college, she whispered. Raina took it with both hands. I'll carry this with me. Sandra nodded once. Before she left, she turned back. They're scared of you now. That's why they're running. But not everyone had run. The next morning, news broke. Timmins had been found, but not by the FBI. She had walked into a small-town sheriff's office in Alabama. Hands up, no lawyer. And when asked why, she gave a single line. They think this ends with me, but it started with her. Her confession was 42 pages long. It implicated names Raina hadn't even dared suspect. A judge she once interned for, a politician she had shaken hands with at a gala, a non-profit that claimed to reform police but funneled millions into surveillance software. It was all in motion now, but the real surprise was at the end of Timmins's statement. A final paragraph, a personal note. To Raina Miles, I hated you for what you did, not because you were wrong, but because you made me look in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw. I still don't. Isaiah read it twice. She's cracking. No, Raina said quietly. She's unraveling. As the news spread, protests erupted across the country. Students walked out. Civil rights groups launched lawsuits. Whistleblowers came forward in waves, but the real fire was still ahead. Because if they thought the storm had passed, the courtroom was packed wall to wall, cameras flashing like lightning, murmurs buzzing like angry bees. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It had become the symbol of a movement, one that refused to be silenced. Raina Miles sat in the front row beside Isaiah and Hayes, a calm storm behind her eyes. She wasn't testifying today. She didn't need to. Her voice had already set everything in motion. Today, she was here to witness the consequences unfold. Federal prosecutors took the floor first, laying out evidence so airtight it could have suffocated. Timmons's confession had unlocked a vault of horrors, cover-ups, forced silence, falsified records, systemic abuse dating back over a decade. But it wasn't just Timmons who was named. The dominoes had started to fall. Raymond Cross had been captured outside Tijuana, trying to flee under a false passport. 2 state senators resigned within hours of the arrest warrant leak. 3 judges were under internal investigation, and Langford, the officer who had knelt on DeMarcus's back, was now facing murder charges in federal court. It was the first time in years that Raina felt a chill of justice beginning to stir. The defense floundered. No spin, no excuse, no plea deal could clean up what had already spilled into the public bloodstream. America had seen the footage. They had read the documents. And now they were waiting for one thing: accountability. Then came the twist. A surprise witness walked into the courtroom, someone nobody had expected. Officer Keller, the same officer who had stood silently by when DeMarcus was arrested. The same one who had falsified the initial report. But now he was pale, visibly trembling, his eyes darting toward the press gallery. "I have something to say," he muttered into the mic. Judge Brooks eyed him carefully. "You understand this court has already received your signed statement." "I want it on record," Keller said, voice cracking. "That I was ordered, that I was told if I didn't go along, I'd be next. I know what I did. I know what I cost that family, and I'm sorry." Raina didn't blink. "Sorry," Isaiah whispered bitterly. "That's all he's got?" But Hayes leaned forward, watching Keller's body language. "He's terrified." And just as Keller sat down, a federal agent walked up to the judge with a sealed envelope. The room tensed. Brooks broke the seal, skimmed the letter, then looked over her glasses. "This court has just received corroboration of a second conspiracy within the state's Attorney General's office. I am ordering a full judicial review of all criminal convictions under Chief Cross's tenure." Gasps rippled. That meant hundreds, maybe thousands of past convictions could be overturned. Raina exhaled slowly. Isaiah gripped her hand. "You did this." "No," she said. "We did." But it wasn't over. After court adjourned, a swarm of media surged toward Raina, microphones in her face, questions rapid fire. "What do you say to the officers who still deny wrongdoing? Do you believe justice has been served? Are you going to run for office?" She raised a hand gently, and the crowd quieted. "I didn't come here to build a career," she said. "I came because my brother can't. Because too many black families have been forced to bury their truth, to bury their children, and then go back to work like nothing happened. I came because silence isn't safety, it's surrender." The crowd applauded. Some cried, others just nodded like they had been waiting their whole lives to hear someone say what they'd been holding in. That night, a vigil was held for DeMarcus. Hundreds gathered in the park where he used to skateboard. Candles lined the edges of the basketball court. A mural had been painted, a vibrant portrait of DeMarcus, smiling, hoodie half-zipped, headphones hanging around his neck. Sandra Vale stood beside Raina and whispered, "He would have been proud of you." Raina nodded. "I just wish he was here to see it." Then something unexpected happened. A small boy, no older than 9, approached her. He had big eyes and tight curls, and he held out a drawing. Raina, standing tall, with a cape made of law books. "My mom said you're a hero," he said shyly. Raina knelt down. "I'm not a hero, baby. I'm just someone who got tired of waiting." He nodded like he understood and ran back into the crowd. The next day, the mayor announced a full overhaul of the police department, civilian oversight, a review board led by citizens, new transparency laws, and most important, the introduction of DeMarcus's Law, which banned the use of sealed juvenile records in adult policing. A week later, Raina walked into a university auditorium. She had been invited to speak not as a victim, but as a changemaker. She stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of students, activists, faculty, and parents. "I used to believe that justice was something you asked for, something you begged from people in power. But now I know, justice isn't given. It's demanded. It's built, brick by all of us." The room stood on its feet, thunderous applause, tears, fists raised. And somewhere in the back, Isaiah clapped the hardest, because they both knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. And as the screen fades to black, a final message appears. How many more families have to fight alone before we all rise together? If this story moved you, stand with us, share it, talk about it, demand more. And don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for stories that challenge, inspire, and ignite change. Your voice matters. Let's make it heard.